Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Power Law Investor. Today is November 12th, 2024. Bitcoin is trading above $88,000 and Kaspa is just above 14 cents. And today we'll be talking about the weekly DCA and how our progress has been coming along. I would encourage you to look at a recent video that I produced on the Kaspa price action. That'll give you a little more context as to what's happening. But in any case, I'll sort of briefly summarize where we are. And again, this is for informational purposes. It's not investment advice. So what I've been doing in this channel is investing $100 every day on power law following crypto assets, namely Kaspa and Bitcoin, and allocating the $100 into cash, Kaspa, or Bitcoin, depending on both how confident I am of the returns, assuming the future is like the past, and what sort of returns I expect based on the growth of the power law. And so I started off on November 19th, and today, about almost 4 months later, uh, uh, I've invested $8,500. This is the amount of Bitcoin that we've purchased just today. This is the amount of total Bitcoin there is. And long story short, we've ended up with an average price paid per Bitcoin of about $62,500, an average price per Kaspa of 12.5 units. And finally, we're in an overall percentage return of about 16.5%, which is crazy given that a week ago that it was almost down by 18%, right? So in the course of just a week, it's gone from being minus 18 to plus 16. Just goes to show how crazy and how volatile crypto can be. And the best way to deal with that is daily DCAing and using this algorithm that I've developed. And you can see currently with this algorithm right now, the allocation is almost 70.4% to Kaspa and only 10% to Bitcoin with 20% in cash. And as a reminder, the power law means that in a log plot, that means it's a log on the time since Genesis and a log of price. The blue line is the price over here. It can be represented by a straight line with a really high degree of fit, which is exhibited by this R squared value. And when we convert that into the log plane or into the linear plane, we get an idea of if the future is similar to the past, what sort of returns we can expect. Now for Bitcoin over here, we've been bouncing around and we dipped quite way below. We almost were at this minus 30% trend line. But then given the price action the last few days from the 60s to the upper 80s, almost 90,000, we're now above the trend line, which means that if we were to invest today and we go back to the trend, we expect a return of about 28%, which is still a really good return if you look overall, but much less than the return we were getting when we were at 54K because, of course, the price has appreciated and so much of the return has already taken place. Okay. And so because of that, we know that we're not getting so much bang for our buck. The algorithm is pushing us to invest more into Kaspa rather than Bitcoin. And when we look at Kaspa, we have a similar line in the log plane with a high degree of R squared fit. But we do have something interesting going on, which is that, especially in the last two months or so, we've seen there to be some significant deviation from the trend line. So if you look in the past, we almost always bounced above the off for the purple line, which is the minus 40 trend line, and only rarely touched this green line, which is the minus 50 trend line. But now we've been below it for quite a while. And we can see that in this graph over here in particular, right? So from about August, we then started going downwards, but from September 15th downwards, we really took this quite a steep descent. And now we're way below the minus 50% trend line. And the reason I believe has a lot to do with KRC20. And I won't get into a detailed description of why that is happening. But what I did want to say was that you can take a look at this chart, which I posted on X. So please sign up for my X if you want to get more timely updates, because it takes longer for me to get to YouTube. Is that we have miners that are receiving miner rewards and miners that are also receiving transaction fees. And ever since KRC20 took off on September 15th, the transaction fees have spiked. So the transaction fees at times can be a lot more than the mining rewards. And what's that done is that it increases selling pressures because these miners may want to sell them as soon as possible if they don't think there's going to be a lot of price appreciation. So right now, we're pumping out about 7 million Kaspa per day in terms of mining rewards, but the transaction fees, as you can see, have spiked up to north of 20 million, 25 million at times. So that's multiple days of selling pressure, of sales that you'd get through mining rewards that have just suddenly accumulated. And that is what I believe has pushed the price down significantly. And so the power law for Kaspa has been sort of like this right now. Now we've had a bunch of big price increase in the last few days, and everyone is very excited above it. And so we're looking at this minus 50% trend line over here, like, oh, we're back above that. I don't think this is the best way to analyze the situation because I believe the situation is more something like this. Right, let me just zoom back out over here so you can see what's happened is from September 15th, we were on trend of having a value of about 23.5 cents, but we had about a 33% decrease at that point. And so the new trend value was more about 16 cents. And so what's happened is because of this increased supply, and this is an approximation, it's early work, there's a lot of stuff that can be done to improve this, but I wanted to get this out there so you guys would be able to see what's happening more or less, is that the minus 50 trend line is now more around 9.5, 10 cents or so, right? And so because everything has been shifted down by about a third because the supply has gone up by 50%. Again, this is an approximation based on the supply increase being about 50%. It could be a little bit lower than that. And in that case, the price shift would be less. But it gives you an idea that everything has gone down, right? And so now, based on the price on this, I think today we're about 14 cents or 14.5 cents. We're just above the minus 30 trend line, the shifted minus 30% trend line. So we could go lower and the power law could still hold. And this is initially when the price goes down, we all of us that are Kaspa holders think, oh my God, this is terrible. What's going on? But this analysis really helped me understand what was going on and realizing the power law is probably still valid. Of course, no one can say for sure. But what's happened is this increased supply has pushed things down for a while. Now, will this be a permanent drop in the power law trend line, or because of this increase in supply, or is it temporary? Well, as you can see, it's hard to know because we get these spikes, but then it does seem to drop down to almost nothing afterwards. So just as a more conservative estimate, I created this analysis of saying that, hey, maybe if you have a sustained 50% drop, how will that impact things? But it does give us some good attractive levels and gives us faith, or gives me faith, that, hey, the power law is still a reasonable way to understand what's going on over here. So what I would say is this might actually be a positive thing because the amount of activity in the network as it goes on through these transaction fees is a sign that more people are using it. So that could be a good thing. And again, the value of the network is not just the number of nodes we have, but the value that has been transacted through it. So even though some of us may think, what is this meme coins nonsense? People are using it to transact value, and that pushes the value of the network higher over time. So yeah, there will be some changes to the algorithm coming up, just because I plan on incorporating this 50% sort of split down into my analysis. And I wanted to give you guys a heads up, but also make that a public thing because I want this to be something that people can go back and say, okay, this is exactly the process that this guy was following in order to make this happen. Kaspa is still down against Bitcoin. Of course, given the amount of Bitcoin action that we've seen, it's not surprising. But again, this is why I find technical analysis really hard, because someone could say, oh, look, this is this resistance. It bounced off here and then bounced off here. Well, next time it just crashed straight through. I don't know what the probabilities are that would have bounced up here or not, but this is just the ratio of Kaspa to Bitcoin. And obviously, because Bitcoin has been going up so much, the ratio has been pulled down. If we look at Kaspa versus the rest of the altcoin market, we had a bounce, that's for sure, last few days. But now we've also sort of started going back again. But overall, we're pretty close to the lows that we've seen. And, if you want to believe technical analysis, maybe there's a way around here that it bounces off. But I find the mathematical power law more reassuring to say, hey, these are the kind of returns that I think we'll expect. And the returns also have likely gone down because The price has gone down, so if you bought at a higher price, the returns have gone down. But if you buy at these lower values, the returns should be just as significant. But of course, our average price in here, as I indicated, was 12.5 cents, or a little under 12.5 cents. So, right about the 40% trend line or so, maybe a little bit higher, maybe about the 30, between the 30 and the 40. And that's a good spot. I feel comfortable with that, and I think the returns are going to be fantastic. More details to come in the next few days and weeks as I build on this analysis. So please like, subscribe, and share. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them down below. And looking forward to seeing them and to the next video. Cheers.